Okay, so I showed you the forms in the browser, and I said Excel's web service, so we ought to go see Excel. Now, I'm assuming that the reason you're here is you're an Excel programmer, and you're amazed that perhaps we can use Excel as a web server, so we should go look at the web server code. And you've seen a portion of it because a big chunk of the code is in C#, and it is a C# Excel add-in, and we use that to call in to Excel. But you forgive me if I don't show you the C# code yet. Let me show you the VBA code first. I want you to see a request coming in. So I want you to see, let's put a breakpoint in here. So we have this module, mod HTTP request, and sorry, I'm just going to uncomment these because we really do. We've got so many parameters coming in. This really does look like a web server. So what you have when you have a web request come in, you have the URL. This dictionary contains all the components of a URL, so you don't have to chop it up. You don't have to parse the string. You will find that it's done for you, and there are many different pieces of the URL in this dictionary. And one piece here is the segments, because actually it's rather useful to see the URL chopped up. Actually, do you know what? I think it's easier if I actually put a breakpoint in. Let's put a breakpoint in. Let's just run this. Now, I need some live data to talk about. So I'm going to go in here. So this is the REST server. We saw this earlier. I pressed F5 and it returned 5 beers back. There should be 4 beers now because we pressed the take delivery button. I'm going to press F5 here and we're going to watch it come in. Okay. So, you know what? It's just easier to show you because I've got some code here which dumps the output of the parameters. Let's just go in here. Let's just see this. You know what? Let's go. Okay. Just have a look at this. So the contents of the dictionary URL is this. So you're seeing the same URL essentially chopped up into little pieces. So there's a whole string. That's it without the web server part of it. Yeah. So localhost port 8080. So you don't have to write any code to chop it up. One thing we have here is segments. So this is actually an array. So this is actually chopped up as a slash, the Foo Bar slash, and then beers slash. And I tend to work with the segments array. In fact, I tend to use that so much that I grab that as a convenient variable up here. So that's actually an array. Anyway, let's go back. So that's everything you want to know. Everything you want to know about the URL is here. And the next part of it is the HTTP method. So that's just a get. So remember, it's get or put or post or delete. So the next thing we're going to output is the query string. Now actually we don't really have any query string on this one. So that's blank. Now the next, but if it wasn't blank, you'd be able to access it because the query string is essentially key value pairs. So it's absolutely totally sorted, totally suited for a dictionary. The next thing we're going to show is the request headers. And this is really interesting. So let's just press this. Okay. So now you're seeing the HTTP request headers. And I think this is really interesting because you actually get to see the guts of a web request. There are things like cache control. So you want no caching. You need to set this to something like this, max age equals 0. The next, one of his line, this next line here says, well, here's my request, and what do I accept as return output? And you get a list of these are MIME types. So the first one is plain text up until the comma. The next one is XML. That's interesting. It doesn't say JSON. I imagine JSON is probably as plain text. I have a cookie. So that's my name, Simon. And the user agent kind of gives you some details as to what the user is running. So I guess we're supposed to tell that this looks like something like Chrome. Or it could be Safari, right? But it's not Internet Explorer. But that's really interesting, and often you'll find that you can influence in very subtle ways and in very powerful ways as well the outcome of a request by setting headers. The last thing to show you here is request cookies, and as far as I can see, there are none. Oh, I have a username. Username equals Simon. Okay, fine. But there's between these parameters, there's an awful lot of information here. So that's very good. So let's just lose that. Now, I pressed F5 and it ran through. So actually that has succeeded. So let's just go back and press it again. Okay. All right. We're coming back in again. So we have the segments. And I said the segments earlier was the URL chopped up. And let's just have the locals window here. So that's very convenient. So we have slash, Foo Bar slash, and then beer slash. And let's move it out of the way. And we don't have a body for a get. So and we just step over this line here. Oh, no. Step out of that. This is my dump. This is my dump dictionary code. What should we do here? Let's put a breakpoint here and run through to that. Okay. So when you do a REST, you can accept all sorts of addresses. So you need to test the address to make sure so that you know which sort of resource to return. So here we have the Foo Bar and then /beers. So we're going to return. Well, first of all, we should see if this is correct. It should be. So we should go into this if statement. And so now we know we have the right address. So now we have to say, well, what's the HTTP method? So here we have get. And here we have, we're going to say script control run. Now I have an object here, which is a module level object. And I will show this, but I've come up to 10 minutes and I need to sort of set the clock again on this video. So forgive me if I just take the video down. Okay, so it's easier if I just, let me just step over this because it's a little confusing. I've actually commented out I see I used to hard code this, and that's why that's sitting in a comment. That's some of the development baggage you're seeing there. Perhaps I should delete that. Actually, let's just get rid of that. Oh, okay, maybe not. Okay, so this ran, that was blank, and now you see, so let's just go to the immediate window, which we cannot see. We could lose this now. So here you can see, this is our JSON coming through. So this script control run, we have an in-memory object. I will show you this. But we convert it to a string, and then we say, okay, look, we set a response header. I told you about headers. Headers are good. Headers allow you to influence the response. And we say, okay, your content type is going to be JSON. And we have status code. So here we're setting 200, which means request fulfilled, request OK. Now, I said I was going to show you MOBs. Let me just show you that. Let's bring this over. It's a module level variable, so we have to go into the module name. And it's, if you just look over here, it says it's JScript type info. I have blogged on this. Actually, I put some Stack Overflow questions up. I'll probably put a link up about what exactly is a JScript type info. But what you need to know for the time being is that you can hold JSON objects which are parsed and parsed into their component blocks. Let me just expand this. Right. So I said that there was an array of 4 bears. You see it kind of duplicated. It says array index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you have the items. Try not to worry about that, but you have the 4 bears. So let's just expand this. So we have, here's Budweiser. So Budweiser, and then country US. And then Chinese beer, and then the Dutch beer, and then Brazilian beer. And these will be the same, right? It's just a different way of getting the same information. Now, I will put a separate video up about how we can use JSON, but just to give you a heads up, we have this thing called the script control. And the script control is a wonderful thing. It's like a little keyhole to the world of JavaScript. So you create, we should say you need to go tools references, which it won't let me do because we're in the middle of a debug. Okay, so I'll show you that later. But you create your script control. And the script control can take many languages, right? So you have to say, actually, I want to use JScript, which is the Microsoft variant of JavaScript. You can do VB script. You can even do things like Python. The script control is this wonderful thing. It was built as part of the componentized efforts of Internet Explorer way back, several versions back. And because it's actually quite old, the JavaScript version is something like version 3. So JavaScript's official name is ECMAScript, and ECMA stands for the European Computer Manufacturers Association. And ECMAScript version 3 is what we're running here. So just bear that in mind, because there are going to be features in the latest versions of ECMAScript or JavaScript which you will not be able to run here. So we have to kind of keep it a little bit plain vanilla. But nevertheless, here we are. We say, okay, we want to say JScript, which is the Microsoft variant of JavaScript. And here we start saying, okay, I'm going to add some JavaScript code. Each of these is a function. These are some commonly used functions which I have accumulated as a little core library. Now, this one is very interesting because this is written by a guy called Douglas Crockford, and this guy wrote a very good book called JavaScript, The Good Parts. And so this guy's a guru, he's an expert. And we need his expertise because part of his library, we want to be able to take strings such as these, and we want to be able to convert those into objects. So that's a string. But then we have the object which we can use. So that's the object there. So you want to be able to take the string to the object and the object to the string. And you need some libraries for that. And the libraries are at this URL. So we have a function to download this. And then once you have it, then actually you can see the function being called. I just add my own little wrappers around it. So JSON stringify and JSON parse. And you'll see this being called here. So we have the script control and we're running JSON stringify. So basically this MO bears, and as I hover over this, you can see it's displaying the contents of the array. So you can see there's 4 tokens there. Each token says the square bracket object. That's the default representation of a JavaScript object. So that kind of proves that you're looking at an in-memory JavaScript array of JavaScript objects. And the JSON stringify function will take that object and then stringify it. That's why this now points to a lovely long string. And that is what we return in this function. So this is the return function. Don't forget, this is what's the name of the function, so we're returning a string. And we set a response header, application JSON. We set the status code to 100, and then we leave. And that is how you get to that's how you get to this JSON. Now, whilst we're here, let's show you some of the other stuff. So some of the other verbs. So I said we can delete a beer. So this is click. And my apologies for the first video. I don't think I was capturing the screen. I don't think I was capturing the mouse pointer on the first video. So you can see now I have the mouse pointer. And if I click on this, that means delete. You can see it goes red. So it just delete the Chinese beer. Okay, so now we come into the code again. And it's the same URL. That's irritating. Let's get rid of that. And let's run it through. No, do not do this. Let's press F5. Let's go through to this line. Okay. And so the method now is delete. And so it's going to jump down here. So we're going to run this function called delete beer, and we're going to say, I told you these segments were the most interesting, so we can say, okay, fine. Actually, do you know what? We should look at the URL. We should look at the URL. Because the first time we had the URL, it only had this section up here. This one we can say delete, and we kind of we need to give an identifier as to what we're going to delete. So this is the Chinese beer we're going to delete. Okay. So that's a segment of the URL. And we're going to call this function delete beer. Now, excuse me. Now we added this earlier. Delete beer. So I said there was an array, and you can see here the functions we set up here were one-liners. This is a multiple line function. And you can see it's JavaScript. And if you can just ignore the quote marks around, and if you can just focus on the JavaScript code, then you can see that what we're doing here, this one is a lookup. We say, okay, given my array, loop through the array, so you can see a for next loop effectively. Go see if the brand name equals the brand, and then I get the index in the array of that brand. And then here in the delete beer, I say, okay, go look it up, and then go delete it. Okay, so that's that. That's how to delete a beer. It's all in JavaScript. Okay, so you can't step through this. So we'll look at strategies to help write your code. And basically, essentially, you write the equivalent lines of code in a browser, and then you just copy it over. We'll discuss this later about whether or not this is a good idea or a bad idea, and things that we can do to improve that. But for the time being, you can see that a function to delete the beer is written here. It relies upon a dependent function called lookup beer, which actually we reuse elsewhere. So what this does is, and let's just see this happening. So we're saying in the array of beers, go delete the Chinese beer. So let's just see this happening. So up here we have 4 beers. The Chinese beer is at index 1. After this runs, the Chinese beer should disappear. We should have 3 beers only. Okay, let's just collapse that and open up again. So you can see sometimes it gets a little upset. So it kind of gets upset because it's like, well, I did have 4 beers before and then you took one away. But nevertheless, let's just go see. So the Budweiser at the top. The Chinese beer was at the 2nd place. And now it's gone. And now you have the Brazilian beer. So it did delete the Chinese beer. So we sort of say, okay, that's fine. Now in the case of a delete, you don't return anything. You return a null string. And then a status 204. And then you drop out. So if I press F5 on this, oops, run through, oops, run through. So you should see 3 beers. If I refresh this, you see 3 beers. Because this is actually, remember, this is a form which has been wired in to call the REST server. So we deleted the Chinese beer, and so the Chinese beer doesn't exist anymore. Let's look at adding a beer. I said Kronenberg before. Let's do that again. Kronenberg 1664. France. Put my breakpoints in. Oh, click and. So it comes in. In this case, an add is a post. So we have. I talked about how we take an object and we convert it into a string. In this instance, we've got a string, and we want to turn it into an object. Now, before I do, we ought to look at this parameter here, a body. So that stands for an array of bytes, body. And gee, I said Kronenberg. I wonder if I can tell. So let's just see. Let's just look at this. Okay. This is ASCII code. I wonder if it's worth while trying to. Oh yes, it is. Okay. Okay. So the ASCII code for 0 is 48. So the ASCII code for 1 is 49, and you can see that here. And the ASCII code for 6 is 54. So you can see 1664. So you can see what I'm showing you here is I'm showing you the bytes. I'm showing you the bytes. It comes in as a byte array. It comes in a byte array where there's 8 bits for a byte. So it's not Unicode at this point. So that's kind of why we have to up here. Let's just get rid of this. Up here, I have some code here. So you say, oh, do we have a body? Oh, yes, we do in this case. We take the byte array and we convert it. We say, look, I want to see it as a VBA string or a VB string. And VB strings are actually 2 characters, so there's 16 bits per character. So we have to sort of run it through this str conversion function. And we say, give me Unicode. That's how we pull this trick, because it does come in. It comes in as raw bytes. And there's a reason for that, because it could be, it could be anything. In this case, we're saying we are defining it to be a string, but it could be anything, so that we make no assumptions about what it is. But in this case, we're saying it's a string, so we have to convert it over. So that's how we got that body variable. And the body variable is just a single beer on its own. So you can see it has its brand and it has its country, and those reflect the values that we put into the forms, into the form fields earlier. So this function JSON parse takes a string and it converts an object. Let's just see that actually happening. So the beer points to nothing at the moment. Let's see a little bit more of that. And then we just step over that line. So now new beer actually points at something, it points to an object. And you can see we have the Chromebook. And so once we've taken the body and we've converted it to an object, we want to add it to our array. So here we have an add beer function. And the add beer function is again it sits in the script control. So let's look at the add beer. So the add beer itself calls into the lookup beer function, which, if you remember, it goes through the array comparing the brand and it returns the position in the array. Once we have the position in the array, first of all, we want to make sure that we don't have a duplicate. So when lookup cannot find something, it returns -1. So we kind of need -1 to be returned before we add 1. If we find the beer in the array, we don't want to add it a second time. This is how we defend against adding duplicate beers. So that's the add beer. And if we just, again, we can step over this. So we have 3 beers, and we're going to add the Cronenberg 1664 beer. If we step over this, you should find that this object in memory will increase. We have to close it off and have to reopen it. You see, sometimes it gets upset. You see, here we have 4. You see, it's added Cronenberg to the end, but sometimes don't worry about that. That's just that's a glitch. That's a glitch. If I were to show you, let's add a watch on that. Where's my watch window? It does, but in both the top half and bottom half, it does actually recognize it's got 4 beers here. Alright, so don't worry, sometimes it gets a little confused. But we added a beer. We parsed beer from a string, we created a new object, and then we added that object to the existing array of objects. And that's fine. And so we can just say, fine. Now, what you're seeing now is, because of the way I programmed the form, what you're seeing, I programmed the form to add the beer, and then because I want to update this table of beers, I come in with another get request. Right, so I come in with another get request. So there we go. It's get, come out. Because I want to redraw this list. So there you are. Okay, so you've seen the get, you've seen the delete. Oh, let's just take that out. You've seen added. Now, if I try and add it a second time, it should complain because I put some logic in there. Or it should say, okay, well, it didn't add it a second time, so it's just actually 65. We can fool it just by changing it. But that makes sense. But there you can see the various operations. Okay, so we've seen requests be made against this URL, Foo Bar beers. And I have another URL which we respond to here called the Foo Bar deliveries. And there's only response to one method, one verb, post. So when I was deleting beers, it became quite clear I kind of needed a reset button. So this take delivery is essentially a reset button. So it goes back to the original 4 beers. And that's exactly what happens here. So we have the Foo Bar deliveries, and we have the default beer table here. And these are the default 4 beers as a hard-coded string. So you can see, let me put a breakpoint in. If I press take delivery, we come through to here. We take the default beer table and we repopulate the original 4 beers into the object level variable. Voila, here we are. And then we drop out. So there isn't much more. To this procedure. We check the URL and then we serve up the appropriate resource. So that's the VBA. I'll just drop out of that. Okay, that's fine.